are live. I'm just checking the different places we are live, making sure that they are showing up and it looks good. So everybody come on down, come on in. We have got a fun little hour, or however long. It doesn't have to be an hour. It can go longer than an hour if you have questions. So I just want to wait just a few minutes to see who's going to pop on. Make yourself known. If you are here, say hello, because otherwise I won't know unless, well, I guess I could go and check out some of the other spaces and places that we are, but hopefully everybody is doing great. I am not seeing Julia. I am not. There you are, Julia. Hey, Julia. Hi, Karen. Yeah, we are coming on live. Thank you for being here, Julia. You're like my cheerleader, my spiritual cheerleader. God bless you for always doing this. Woohoo! She says, "Go, Debbie, go." So we're just going to gather on steam, a little bit of steam. Hi, Angela. Oh, good to see everybody is starting to jump on board. I know there's some people on Facebook, and there's more people popping on as we speak, because I'm just kind of watching. As I get to know this technology, there's actually like a little eyeball that shows me how many people are on, and I get to pay attention to all of those those little pieces, those little tidbits. So I am super excited today because I am turning the tables on my friend Tony, the astrologer, because he has had me on his podcast several times. We'll talk about that when he comes in, because he has a great story about the first time I was on, and I led a meditation on his podcast, and I was just on with him. What was it? I think it was like a week ago. So I wanted to invite him because we've got some astrological influences that are coming up next week that are kind of a big deal. There's something going on right now that's a big deal. I am not an astrologer. I am not. But what I do is I do read the energy, and it is amazing to me how when I read the energy of what's going on, it tends to coincide with the influences from astrology. And I'll tell you exactly why I keep calling them influences, because, and Tony and I are going to talk about this, and as we go, that astrology is what influences us. It's not the end all be all, as it were. So we will get into some of that, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and as we gather steam, because people will be popping on and off as we go. So I am going to bring Anthony on and give him his formal introduction. And wait, I have to change the thing so we're kind of both here. So you are now in the room, Sir Tony, and I love that I get to turn the tables on you and have you doing a live, and it was really fun to do the YouTube last week. Michael, yay! We've got Michael Arrington in the house. Thank you for coming, Michael. So Anthony Picco has been a professional astrologer since 1986 and has spent all his life quite curious about the mystical and spiritual. He is a graduate of the Silva Mind Control and a lifelong scholar of the Seth material. He's going to talk about that if you're not familiar. He's a Reiki practitioner and also co-hosts the monthly Big Apple Astrology Meetup group in New York City. He hosts a weekly internet radio show called Cosmic Tuesdays, and that is on every Monday from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And yes, it is called Cosmic Tuesdays, but it is on Monday. And he interviews astrologers, psychics, energy healers, and other metaphysical students and practitioners. His website, and I will put that up for you for those of you who could see it, and is www.aspicco.com. So thank you for being here. How is it to be interviewed instead of being interviewer? Something like that.
I've done it a few times. It's fun. I'm a Capricorn. We're not really known for being spontaneous, but I prepare completely, and then I can be spontaneous because I've got all my backup. So it's okay. I enjoy it. I've gotten very used to it. I was a little stiff when I first started doing this stuff, but I've learned to roll with whatever happens. So not a bad deal.
Yeah.
And the story which you mentioned earlier, we'll get this out of the way. The first time Debbie was on my show, and there are occasions when I have mediums or psychics or people with energy healing on the show where there are electronic troubles. The sound or comes in and out, or we have issues. And well, Debbie started leading a group meditation. I'm in New York, she's in Chicago, and everybody that was, I guess, connected listening to the show joined in. And about 5 minutes into it, the internet blew in my neighborhood. We were taken off the air. It wasn't just my computer went down or hers. My entire Hell's Kitchen neighborhood for like a 5 or 6 block radius lost internet for the next 3 hours. So watch out for Debbie. She's powerful.
It's not just me. It's all those people that were on the meditation as well. Like that really is something when something like that happens. I actually had an instance where it happened on one of my meditations, and the person that was supposed to start, I had somebody helping me out, and she was literally about to open her mouth, and we took out all of Oakland, California.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and it came back the second we were done, like about 2 minutes when I was just finishing the meditation, the lights came back on and she popped back on and said hello. I could see everything sort of come on at the end, and I thought that was a hoot. And yes, Karen, I also cause leaks. So everything went out. Every time I go to try and do a live, this one was the smoothest because I think it has to do with how fun it is to play with friends. Right? This is not just me, but I took out my fuse box, several fuses, went through fuses, and then the next day my bathtub went completely and wouldn't turn off, and maintenance couldn't get the water off. But I want to explain that kind of before we jump in, because this is really a clairvoyant thing that is interesting. And I was telling a story to one of my teachers, and he said, wow, that's what happens when you pull your energy out. So it was really more about my ownership of those items. This is my plumbing. This is my electricity. And I pulled it out, and boom. And knock on wood, and I am knocking on wood. I am a little superstitious, but it hasn't happened since then.
I haven't popped anybody off the air, so you're safe with me.
Okay, no, that's good. It's really good. So I wanted to ask you a couple, because I introduced you, and you're a graduate of the Silva Mind Control and a scholar of the Seth material. Could you kind of tell everybody a little bit about that? Because I had to Google. I mean, I remember growing up and hearing about Silva Mind Control, and just for everybody out there, it's not mind control.
No, it's about controlling your own mind. And actually, when I first heard about it, it was a little suspicious. It was very popular in the 70s, although I think his name was Jose Silva, created it in, I think, the 50s. And I had been interested in mystical stuff, but I came out of a I had sort of a Christian background as a kid, and I just wanted to get away from all the trappings. And what happened was Silver Mind Control sort of taught you how to be psychic and spiritual without being mystical. Is the only way. It's almost like stripped away all the angels and the purple rays and Saint Germain. Yeah, and they told you that you can program yourself, and they taught us how which is something now has become more and more popular. But in the 70s, they'd say, when somebody asks you how you are, don't say, "Oh, I'm okay," because that's what your body will believe. You say, "I'm doing better and better." And so the whole thing is, how are you doing? I'm better and better. And they taught you how to white frame things, which was kind of a form of manifestation. You saw something the way you wanted it, and you put a white frame about it. And instead of meditating, they told you, go to your dimension. And they work with the concept of when we're awake, our brain waves are in beta. Like right now, I'm in beta. I'm talking, I'm interacting. When you're relaxed, it's still, you can be awake or asleep. You go to the alpha level. And alpha is when you are very programmable. It's when you're dreaming is in alpha. And if you're just sort of quietly listening, you're in alpha. And actually, children spend most of their time in alpha. It's a wonderful time to sort of program yourself. And so what they do is they teach you to go to your dimension and manifest things. And you can't graduate without a psychic reading, and everybody graduated. So I really enjoyed it because it didn't require, I was going to my dimension. I wasn't going down to speak with Buddha or whatever it was or all that stuff. It was very clean for me and sort of pushed away all that stuff. And I still use it to a degree to this day. I mean, I call it manifesting now. I may use different terms, but the training is still there because I went into those classes when I was in my early to mid 20s. And
well, there wasn't much out then. In the 70s.
No.
Like there wasn't, it wasn't like mainstream, psychic. The psychics were all the woo-woo, people. And now, I mean, I have people on here that are, teaching classes as well. I teach classes and it's really come very far from that time. And you've taken my classes, so I don't know how that was.
They helped. They definitely helped. Well, the thing is, by the time the mid 60s came along, we were so science oriented as a society.
Right.
And
intellectually, we were stuck on our intellect.
And the hippies came along and started saying, "Oh, let's try different stuff." Astrology was almost dead by the early 60s, but there were some pioneers hanging in there. And then since the 70s, you had a lot of new ideas coming out, but nothing really coalesced. I mean, you had Silver Mind Control because it was created 10 years earlier. So there were things out there, but it was all over the place. There was no real focus. And I found that I personally feel by the early 80s, I heard about Reiki. I didn't take it for another 10 years or so, but I didn't study it. But as I became an astrologer, I started noticing almost an exponential increase in all the mystical people. It's really become, I mean, it's one of the reasons I do my show. The whole point of doing my show is to make people realize this is everywhere. Don't believe the mainstream media when they say all these people are weird and there's nobody out there that believes this stuff, And the Seth material was a major step for me too. Just very quickly, there's a lot of books written by an entity who calls himself Seth, or as he puts it, you can call me Seth. Jane Roberts has channeled the books literally in the sense that she dictated, or Seth dictated through her chapter headings, punctuation. They could be in the middle of a chapter and not get back to it for like a month, and she'd pick up right in the middle of a sentence. And there's this really, they're wonderful books. The starter book, the first one is Seth Speaks. Essentially, you can strip it all down to you create your own reality on every level. And we have much that there are no victims. We create everything that happens to us, maybe not always consciously, we are all connected, but we're all unique individuals for a reason. We should work with playing and joyfulness. You shouldn't be dragging your ass around like the world sucks, And I mean, this is much more sophisticated than that, clearly. But he said time doesn't exist. There's parallel lives we have. There's Tony the astrologer, and maybe there's another universe where Tony became an author, and then maybe another one where Tony became something else. I don't know.
You ever jump timelines?
Seth has suggested we do weave in and out, but we weave in and out of ones that are relatively similar. Look, I'll be perfectly honest. When I talk to people I've known for years and we recall past events, I'm kind of like, what, was he in the same timeline with me?
Yeah, well, I
Back
think all
then.
of us can say that. It's
Yeah. And sometimes
it's
people, you'll hear people talk, the modern terminology now is glitches in the matrix. But
oh, I never heard that. That's just way too scientific. I'm a clairvoyant. I try
The
to.
Matrix is that whole movie with
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves and
yeah. No, I get
reality.
that part.
So, and there are things that we all have these experiences where, like, I put this down here, I came back 5 minutes later, it's gone, and then 2 hours later, it's back where I left it. Or things that just, we've all had things experienced where we sat there going, like, that didn't really happen, did it, or did it? We moved through time unexpectedly. I remember one time I was waiting for something and I had to wait 2 hours, and I turn around once and it's like it's 2 hours in the future, and I'm like, what? Wait a minute, I wasn't sitting here for 2 hours, So I have a friend of mine. She says,
well, in spirit, there's no time or space.
Yeah, so
that it's no.
Seth tries to encourage us to work with those concepts and take control of our own reality and realize we should be playing with it. One of my favorite quotes is, "Anything done in complete seriousness will not work."
Absolutely. I try to teach everything I teach with the clairvoyant development and in my workshops and everything. Everybody takes it really seriously, and it's meant to be done with amusement, because what happens when we're not amused, we go like right into what we call the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We go right into that space of being a victim, or that space of looking at something super serious or whatever. I have a great dimensional shift story for you that happened to me.
Okay.
And I really hadn't thought about it, but as we're talking about this and you're bringing this up, it kind of comes to the forefront where there was, I want to say it was like in August or something. And I had a really hard time grounding. I couldn't focus. I couldn't, I was just, I don't know. It was the weirdest space, and I can't quite explain it. It was just a really weird space. And then suddenly everything shifted, and it was like this big lead up, almost like a build up, like a volcano kind of a pressure. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly it was like falling off a cliff, the energy. But I woke up in the morning and I knew that there was a shift. Okay. And I had been quite aware of it, and nothing seemed real. Even my apartment, the energy felt different. Outside felt different. The readings were different. And everybody had been living in this sort of, again, like you said with your friend, were they in the same reality? But this is, people had different almost personalities. It was just like jumping a timeline or into a different dimension. And then come February, so this is a few months later, right? My dad had been on the heart transplant list. And in February, we got a call that he got a heart. And the first thought that came to my mind wasn't, oh, wow, this is great. This is, I mean, of course that was there, but that wasn't the first thought. The first thought was back to the dimensional shift in August. And I said out loud in my apartment, this would not have happened if it weren't for us changing timelines, changing dimensions. And I was very, very clear, and so clear, much more clear than I've ever been in my whole life. I can't explain it because there's no words for the feeling or the energy or how that came about.
Yeah, the vocabulary is limited. Sometimes trying to talk about this stuff is very difficult.
It's very difficult. But when I just knew, and to be honest, I'd forgotten about the shift completely. I got about my life, I went about my life from, September, October, November, December, went through the holidays, January, February. And then when it came up, so for that to be the first thing that pops into my mind.
Yeah, there's a connection, sure.
There was absolutely a connection. So, so that's some of that background, but tell me about, how did you get into astrology? Like what brought you in, and then I really want to. We'll jump into some fun stuff.
Not that
this isn't fun.
I was studying stuff. I was reading the Seth material before I got into astrology. I took Silver Mind Control, so I was always curious about, well, what does that do? What does that do? What about this? What is psychometry? Things like that. But the thing I knew for sure was that astrology was absolute garbage. I said, this is completely ridiculous. There's no way planets can affect you, yada, yada, yada. And what happened was about 6 months before I got my first astrology reading, I got a notebook and I just wrote the sun signs on each page. And I started writing down everybody I knew where they fit. Now, not every person. It's like if I worked in a company with 30 people, I picked the ones I interacted with and how I understood them. And I started noticing there were patterns among them. There were a couple of signs. There were Taurus and Scorpio and Virgos and a couple of Libras that had tons of them. And then there were no Geminis, there were no Sagittarius. And I'm like, well, I didn't do this consciously. So there must be some sort of a pattern here. And I was dating a woman who went and had her astrology read. And she said, you should check it out. It's interesting. She was very cool about it. It wasn't like, you need to have your chart done. And I was like, all right, I'll go check it out. By the end of the reading, I was so paranoid. I want to know how long she'd been tapping my phone, how she got her hands on my diaries, which one of my friends she had spoken to. She was so accurate in so much of what I said and did. I was completely freaked out. And Capricorns, which is what I am, tend to be paranoid. So the first thing I started doing was just grabbing every book, because I'd look at the piece of paper and go like, how did she get it from this? So I started studying and grabbing books, and I have a tendency to obsession when I'm into something. And about 2.5 years later, and of course you grab all your friends, let me do your chart, because you won't understand it. And then around 2.5, 3 years later, I did my first total stranger. I had an answering service at the time. You can see how long ago this was. And the answering service, what?
Answering service.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the operator took a message from a friend of mine who left a message saying, well, it's because I have a Scorpio moon. And she said, are you an astrologer? And I said, well, I know astrology. She goes, would you do my reading? And I'm like, I don't really know this person. But I went and did it. And I charged her $5. I said, I'm just a beginner.
Sweet.
And I nailed her. I mean, I didn't know a lot about transits yet, but I read her personality. I got it down really, really well. And I remember leaving her apartment and walking down the street. It was late at night, and I actually did one of those movie things where you jump in the air and you kick your heels, like, yes, it worked out, And after that, it's like, well, I guess I'm an astrologer now. If you told me 3 years earlier that you're going to end up being an astrologer, I'd be like, oh, right. But I am. And I've been doing it ever since. I've certainly grown and matured and learned tons more over the years. And you're always learning something with astrology. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things I realized is that, because people always say, oh, the planets can't possibly affect you. And it's like, you're probably right. We don't know how astrology works. We don't think
energy. It's energy, like yes. Everything else. Everything is energy.
But it's not energy that science understands yet. And
Yep.
As I've said, just because science can't prove it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Whereas somebody once said, magic is just the science that they haven't caught up to yet. And what I've discovered, though, is that the planets are indicators. Like if I see in somebody's chart Mars is squaring the moon, I know they're going to have a temper and have issues with anger. Every time I have seen Mars square moon in a chart, they've got a temper and they get into trouble with their anger. And we can work with that in a chart. But I look at it this way. It's kind of like when I look at a clock and the big hands on the 12, little hands on the 3, it's telling me it's 3 o'clock. But I don't think the clock is causing time to exist. So I know Mars square moon tells me the person's got this attitude. I don't know if Mars is causing it and the moon is causing it, but I know that there's a connection, and we have over the centuries tuned into whatever the symbols are,
right.
What Mars means, what Mercury means, what Venus means, and we've nuanced them a lot. And it's still growing. I've always felt that the discovery of some of the outer planets like Uranus and Neptune and Pluto are indicators that our society is evolving, and we're reaching a part where it's like, you know what, guys,
Yeah.
it's time to take it to the next level, whatever that means, and we do tie in the outer planets with what was discovered when it happened. Like Uranus is all about freedom and changes. Well, it came out we discovered it during the American and the French Revolution, when kings were no longer acceptable and people wanted to govern themselves. So personal freedom and chaos are kind of part of what Uranus is, because that's when it was discovered. And I can go on and on about that, but that's the symbols of where we get these things from. So, and the newer we didn't even trust Pluto till we discovered Pluto in the 30s, and there weren't even
wasn't it a planet and then not a planet and then a planet again?
Wait a minute. Okay, astronomers and astrologers used to be the same job. And then when the Enlightenment came along, which is a period of time when we kind of became unenlightened, astronomers said, we're not astrologers. We're not astrologers. And the people who voted to make it not a planet, this is an odd story, it was at the end of an astronomical conference of scientists. So most of the people had left. It was like the last day of the conference. And like 40% of the people left there decided to vote Pluto wasn't a planet. So it wasn't even the majority of astronomers that said it. So we're like, oh yeah, it's not a planet. Whatever, you can say whatever you like. We know better. We never said it isn't a planet anymore. That's the astronomers, and they do this every now and then. They throw something out there to give astrologers a pain in the ass. Like they recently, a few years ago, declared that Ophiuchus, which is a constellation, isn't in the zodiac, and therefore, astrology is inaccurate. And it's like, well, we've known about Ophiuchus for 3,000 years. It's not like we didn't know it was there. We also know the Big Dipper isn't in astrology either, and neither is Orion's belt. I mean, it's a very specific set of constellations in a circle around the Earth, so to speak. So, but they like to throw out things that make everybody question astrology and bust our chops and make it difficult.
Because what if there was more than science? What if there was more? What if clairvoyance is real? But you know what? I think we also evolve in that sense as well, where more people welcome it in. And case in point, Reiki is now acceptable in hospitals.
Yes, I know a doctor.
Early on, when I was in my clairvoyant program, well, actually, I was out of my clairvoyant program. I was teaching clairvoyant development, and my girlfriend had a baby. And when I went to see her, he had stopped breathing, and I gave him a healing in the neonatal ICU or something. Right. And they made me scrub up because she said, can she come in? And I said, she asked me to do the healing. I was panic stricken. I'm like, what am I going to do in this one of the biggest hospitals in Chicago is super intimidating, but they let me give him a healing, and his blood gases that were absolutely had tanked actually came up to normal levels during the healing. The nurses thanked me. I left, and I still have no idea. It still boggles my mind. So I don't know how it works. And so when we're talking about, a scientist needs that, is that the proof, or is this the proof?
Well, Seth has made an interesting point. He said, the scientists aren't asking the right questions yet.
It's all about the questions.
I know, and it's like,
and he says, clairvoyance.
He says, as long as we keep looking for smaller particles, we'll find them. Like, atoms are small. No, wait, there's there's subatomic. There's no wait, and so and he's almost implying that we keep creating what we expect to find. So the questions are not, science still believes that everything should work the same way all the time, and the thing is, intuition and whatnot is emotionally based. It's not going to be exactly the same every time, because neither are emotions. So as long as science believes that something should operate exactly the same every time, they're just missing the whole point. Some of them, I mean, there are genuine. I know there's a surgeon up at Columbia Presbyterian in New York that if he thinks his patients are open to the idea, he'll talk about Reiki, and he will operate with a Reiki master in the operating room with him. Yeah. So, and he said he's seen the numbers change. Yeah, he's seen the number as he's operating. He's watching the monitors, and he sees the Reiki affecting the patient. So, it's there, and hopefully, like I joke, when I first heard of Reiki, nobody knew it. Now I joke that if in New York you throw a stick, you're going to hit somebody who knows Reiki.
Right. Who knows Reiki? Yeah, it's a
not
big thing.
Not even as a practitioner, but just they know how to do it. I put it in my toolbox. I don't do it professionally, but I meditate every day with it, and I send healing energy to those people that need it. So
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
The more and more people that we bring in, whether it's, I call them the Light Brigade, right? So the more and more people who are open to it, there's every different method and things like that. I tend to work with the abilities of the clear seeing, right? My big deal, which I don't really talk about, is that I was the psychic healing teacher at a school. And so I've been thinking, I really want to teach this. I'm trying to figure out how to teach it, because it's you comb through the aura, you comb through the energy systems and things like that. There'll be a way, and I will find it. Right. I will absolutely find it. But this is all, it's all like great stuff. And that's why we can chat. But tell me, because you and I talked about this, and I'm going to bring this up again. So
Sure.
I said it on your show or before your show. I don't know which one. Could be either, any of the above. But to me, astrology influences us. Right. And when I read the energy, it always amazes me. I check, let's say, my horoscope, or I check my astrology, or I check the astrology in the world and see what's going on. When I do my energy reads, let's say for the month, and it is amazing that every single time the astrologers have it. And so I always wonder which came first, the chicken or the egg. And I never really know the answer to that question. But I think it is all tied in, that it influences us, but it makes me insane when people blame. And I know I shouldn't resist it. I should be neutral. But when people blame the astrology, this happened to me because I'm this way, because I'm a Scorpio with a sun rising.
Yeah, I don't
whatever. We cannot blame the astrology. The astrology is an influence. You as a being have free will.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big, it's like, you're not going to blame astrology here, is what I always tell my clients. I was like, oh, if it wasn't for Saturn, it's like, Saturn is your friend. Stop it. The way I look at it, it's like astrology show, first of all, I believe we choose when we're born. So clearly in my belief system.
And we choose our parents.
Yes. And the whole deal of where we get. And we set up appointments. They're loose. They're not locked in stone. And I believe our astrology chart shows us both our strengths and skills, where we can trust ourselves, and also where there are areas that we still have things to learn. And so ideally what I do is, when somebody comes to me, I'll go, oh, well, you probably have problems doing this, this, and this. And they'll be like, oh, yeah. It's like, well, you've got this over here. When you do that next time, instead of doing A, B, C, try doing C first. It might work better, than the way. So you try to sort of help people understand their personal dynamics better. But none of it's locked in stone. I can tell, it's sort of like a weather report. The weatherman or woman can tell you it's going to snow tomorrow, and they can tell you it's going to be 6 to 8 inches. So you decide, do you change your plans and stay home? Do you get some boots? Do you go out there anyway with a sled and skis? So it's not about, astrology can tell you what I call it, the emotional and spiritual weather forecast. Okay. I can turn to somebody and say, you know what, the next 6 months, you're really going to be reassessing yourself. It's not a good time to start something new. Or I might say, this is a wonderful time to start something new. Take advantage of the energy that's there. So that's what I see. Now, will I tell somebody you should therefore open a hardware store? No, that's their choice. I can say it's a good time to start a new enterprise. They decide what it is. Now, people will have tendencies. We talk about free will, but the thing with free will, if there's a guy born 5'2" tall when he gets to be an adult and he wants to be a basketball player, the odds are kind of stacked against him. Now, if he wanted to and showed tremendous willpower, he could be the world's first famous 5.2-inch basketball player. But it's going to take more work. So I look at a chart and I'll say, well, here's the way it flows the easiest. And if you want to go over here instead of over there where it's flowing, well, you're going to have to be aware that it's going to take extra energy. But I also say you chose this when you came in, so
right.
And that's what I think is possible. I think the best thing sometimes is to tell people, if the next 6 months, be careful, because you're going to be feeling very impatient and you might have an accident. I would never tell anybody, on April 6th, you're going to have an accident. But I might say, that's a real rough week for you. You're going to be very impatient. Take a deep breath. Don't run into things, or you will have an accident, So that's what I don't, it's what they call them probabilities. Astrology can show you what the probabilities are, and you still have to manifest it. I mean, Seth helps me a lot with astrology, because I'm always remembering, you chose this chart, you created this reality,
right.
and this is a way of understanding it. I have over the years traded astrology readings with numerology readings, tarot card readings. They all say
you need to do my
yes,
chart.
I came across your details today, July, whatever. I have them down here. I circled them and said, I have to get to that July 31st.
Yep. And my mom's on, so it's 6:02 p.m.
Well, is that the birth certificate, or your mom was kind of busy at the time?
I know. Well, I think that's what she told me, 6:02 p.m.
And so they all back themselves up, whether you go to a psychic or an astrologer, whatever it is we all are tapping into. We're just manifesting. I do it astrology. I often joke astrology is, I'm a psychic with training wheels. If I don't feel the inspiration, I can go, your Jupiter's on your Mars. That's what's going on, So, because there is some intuition in it,
Well, of course, because you have to interpret, regardless of, yes, this sign means this or that. If you talk to 3 different astrologers, they may have a different sort of take on it. As I said, when I do a monthly newsletter, and I always do like a monthly forecast, right? So I read the energy, I look at that, and then I read, 3 or 4 different astrologer, takes on it. And it really, really is interesting. Thank you so much, Angela. It really is interesting to see how that works, right?
Yeah.
To see how they coincide. But it also amazes me when I'm looking at that energy, right? And I'm looking right at it, and how that's nuanced or influenced. So you have your own, that was a word I was looking for, was you have your own nuance to how you do your charts, and somebody else has their own nuance, yet the information is there, but it's interpreted differently, like anything else. I can look at something and you can look at something, and we can both interpret it differently.
And there is a similarity, because you get asked 3 astrologers, you'll get 3 very similar readings with probably slightly different emphasis here and there. But the essential chart, believe me, we can pass it around among us. We'll see it. Some of us use different techniques, but we all tend to have the same. Although I often joke, you ask an astrologer, ask 5 astrologers a question, you'll get 10 opinions, because we argue about a lot of stuff. But there's a general consensus of what we do understand.
Yes. And yeah. Well, and I would think, because it's also in black and white, so to speak.
Yeah.
In other words, it's this or that. It's you could see where the planets are, where all these different things are.
Yeah.
So speaking of the planets,
them things.
And I hope that, and by the way, if you want your astrology chart done, you can connect with Tony on Facebook, Anthony Picco. You can I don't know if you have public profile, or I don't.
No, I have the Cosmic Tuesdays Facebook profile, but also just have me, Anthony, right there. Anthony S. Picco.
Anthony S. Picco. And then
you
can also contact him on his website, www.aspicco.com.
Right.
So I just want to give that shout out. But speaking of the planets, I hope that you all noticed this beautiful background that I grabbed this morning to get this show, promoted and everything. And as it turns out, one of the reasons that I wanted to have Tony on the show, other than the fact that it's always so much fun when we get together and we just 40 minutes with ease,
Yeah.
Just chit-chatting here. But there's this thing happening next week on April 12th that has not happened in, what is that, 166 years.
Well,
And
some of it is, yes. It's a lot of different stuff going on, but go ahead.
well, I'm talking about the Jupiter Neptune one is alignment. Isn't
Jupiter
that
and Neptune happens about every 15, 20 years, but Neptune takes 165 years to go all
in
the way around.
Pisces? So
Yes,
it's in Pisces.
Yeah. And it is important. By the way, I just want to mention to Karen, I will address what you asked in the chat, but not this exact second. There's more than one branch of astrology. What I do is natal astrology for the most part, which is I do people's charts. But there's another branch of astrology, among others, called mundane astrology. They look at world events and how we are influenced by where the planets are now. Not specifically, see, there's two things going on. One is how the world is influenced by the planets.
Right.
Then you have to look at a person's individual chart and say, well, is this particular planet giving you a hard time? So mundane astrology, a lot of things have been going on in the last few years. Clearly, everything's been hitting the fan lately. Very specifically on April 12th, Jupiter and Neptune will conjunct, means they're right on top of each other at 23 degrees. Jupiter moves faster, so Jupiter's going to keep going and be in Aries by next year. But it's interesting that, first of all, both of them ruled Pisces. Before we discovered Neptune, Jupiter ruled Sag and Pisces. Then now Neptune was assigned to Pisces. So the two planets that are connected to Pisces are becoming conjunct in Pisces, which is interesting because we're actually leaving the age of Pisces and entering the age of Aquarius.
So what is that? What is that? Okay.
Well,
because you're going to have to explain that for people like me who.
Yeah. Neptune is a planet that symbolizes on a healthy level spiritual connections, our awareness that life is an illusion, but in a very important illusion. We deliberately created this, but that spiritual sense that, things are not quite exactly what they seem. There's more going on behind the scenes. It's a profoundly empathetic, it's connected to Pisces, empathy, understanding, compassion. That's when Neptune is functioning in a healthy way. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It's the biggest planet, and it rules Sagittarius, Sagittarius is always about more. What's over there? I want to see that. What's that? Is a big expansion. So when it hits Neptune, you have kind of this increase of you start losing boundaries because Jupiter keeps expanding and losing limitations. And so on one level, it can be deeply, profoundly empathetic and spiritual. Okay. And, one example is the war in the Ukraine, which is going on right now, has brought out a tremendous empathetic outpouring worldwide, more so than in history we've seen before. How it ends is a whole other story, and I'm not predicting anything. But see, the other side, though, when every planet has a positive and a less than ideal manifestation of its abilities. Now, since Neptune on one level is all about denying the physical world to reach the spiritual world, but the other side of denying the physical world is delusions, drugs, alcohol, lies, and deceit. And Jupiter is going to expand that
so
too.
Far, right on.
So we have the possibility of a really profound empathetic expansion coming in mid-April, early April, this next week. But also some people are probably going to be more delusional than they were. And I'm kind of focusing and meditating on, let's bring this forward, folks. Let's not, hit that brick wall.
So can I jump in energetically on that?
Yeah, say what you like.
Because here's the clairvoyant. And Karen, we are not forgetting about you. I've got your question there because it's a really good one. But so part of what we're seeing from a clairvoyant standpoint that ties right in with what Tony is saying is the level of what we call transmediumship, where there's a whole bunch of beings that didn't have like bodies, right? There's a lot of different spirits, right? So you can have a spirit that's like a ascended master or an angel or a healing guide or any kind of guide, right? But there's also spirits like the drunk down the street and things like that. So when you talk about delusional, I talk about people who are what we call out of control transmedium, who will run every different energy, whether it's pain, whether it's another being, whether it's radio waves or from the ETs, that they run that through them. So in the way we, let's say, talk about that is that it's delusional. But what it is that person has all these different energies, and generally it's all based on a lot of pain. So it's so interesting, you know, that when you read that kind of stuff, right, they're channeling all these different energies. And even Einstein said that life is an optical delusion.
Okay.
No, Einstein, there's actually a quote that he said was an optical delusion. And I see, really, we are living in a dream. This is a dream. It's just, which dream are we in? Which dream are we gonna
it's
a
dream we're all agreeing. It's a dream we're all agreeing on too.
And also, you know, we'll talk about, like, on the positive aspect, I see that as so inspirational. It's part of the awakening, and you alluded to it before, that we're stepping into the age of Aquarius, which is all about a new level of consciousness. And what's super interesting is I'm seeing it in every single one of my readings and every single one of my classes that I'm teaching, that people have entered a new space, but they haven't taken up that space yet.
Not yet. Nope, not yet.
They created it. It's there. So imagine if, oh gosh, I'm trying to think. So let's say it's a cylinder and you give it more space, but you're still only in the middle of it. You're still only using, you know, you might have been using 100%. But now you need to expand because you have more space, and it's an expansion. It's a breath. It's the empathy and all that. And that really ties right in with both aspects of what you're talking about, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. And by the way, I just want to point out, the ages last about 2,000 years. So we may not be rushing into it, but we're definitely moving to that area. There's a shift in consciousness, and we've been doing something for about 2,000 years that, you know, Pisces, fish is often identified with the Christ consciousness. You know, I'm not arguing over whether or not
bring that up.
Yeah,
I was hoping.
I'm not arguing whether or not Christ existed, but there is a Christ consciousness before the year zero, however you want to identify when the energy shifted. You know, people were far colder and crueler to each other, and then this whole idea of empathy and connection and spirituality began to imbue us. Not that we always manifested in the most ideal way with holy wars and all this other crap, but that wasn't that energy anyway. We misdirected it. So now we're reaching a part, and one of the things, the differences to me, Pisces, everything was kind of merged. You know, we're all one. And then Aquarius, the symbol of Aquarius is the water bearer, and the symbol is the individual in service to society, the person that takes the bucket down to the river and brings the water back. And so I think what's happening is we are recognizing more strongly as we enter the age of Aquarius that, yes, we are all one, but yes, I very specifically came in this time to be Anthony Picco. You very specifically came in this time to be Debbie Taitel, because we decided to program ourselves, or whatever you want to call it, to serve a certain function and join the world. And I like to believe that this kind of a consciousness will eventually get rid of our pyramid structures, not literally the pyramids, but the idea of, like, oh, there's a king and there's a president and there's a corporate, and then we all kind of, and I think
the powers that be, we'll just call them the powers that be.
Aquarius is more likely to form like tribal links, and which is what we're seeing on how many groups have you joined in Facebook. Oh, this is for astrologers, I'll join that group. Oh, this person loves comic books, I'll join. So we're creating these little separate groups that are still able to interact. So I think and of course, you've got many people that don't want anything to change. So we're in a very tumultuous period of shifting away. If you really, nobody agrees when the age of Aquarius started, but if you just look at the last couple of 100 years, things have accelerated. For 3,000 years, there were no assembly lines. There was no mass production. And then suddenly it starts taking off. And I often feel conceptually, the Aquarian age began when the first thing came off the assembly line. And now you could have another one just like the other one. Before that, everything was handmade. So there became a whole shift in how we perceive material items. Oh, I can buy another one. I broke that. So things became less precious in some ways.
You're reminding me of the movie, the Charlie Chaplin movie, Modern Times. Because that's what they talked about, the Industrial Revolution, the assembly line, the all of that. That's an interesting take.
So I think it's possible that was the beginning of the Aquarian age, in the sense of there's a lot of context and concepts that have to be adjusted, and we're working in that direction. I think the fact that there's a lot more. One of the interesting things about the whole mystical explosion is that, there's no mystical corporation. It's all individuals doing what they do.
Right.
So, and I'm reading stories of like high school teenagers that create robots that go through the ocean and clean plastic. And that's an example of the individual serving the society, is what I'm talking about, the concept of the Aquarian age. Now, we still got a ways to go, clearly, but I think that's the direction we're headed in.
But look at the energy of the children that we are bringing in, the Greta Thurmans and right. I saw a story about a little kid had a lemonade stand. It was on the news,
right.
A lemonade stand, and they wanted to raise money for Ukraine. And this little kid who actually couldn't even speak, the mom's in the background going, well, remember, this is what you did, and they're trying to interview this, 6-year-old or 7-year-old. And so finally whoever was interviewing them said, well, how much money did you raise? And she said, oh, we raised $4,000. And I was like,
what?
Like, what? And I mean, that's incredible, but this is the level of the children. They are doing it. It's not their parents prompting them to do it. They're wanting to do it. And that just loving and graceful space that we are turning into. So next week, y'all, as we go into Holy Week, we just finished the Ramadan fast. Next week, we've got
Sunday,
Good Friday and Passover. And so we enter Holy Week. So isn't it interesting that the planet that represents the Christ consciousness
is expanding and being encouraged.
Expanding and opening up right before that space. And let me be clear, the Last Supper was a Passover Seder hello. That is why it's always together. And it is a very spiritual time going across the board. So enjoy that, tie into that, do your meditations with it. We've got my gosh, this month we have 2 new moons and a eclipse in Taurus. We've got the full moon next week. So if you have any bit where you enjoy energy, this is the week to start tapping in, tap into yourself, tap into your intuition, tap into all of it. But I do not want to go any farther unless you have something, because I'd like to answer Karen's question and then Angela's and take some other questions.
Just very quickly, I want to mention Jupiter and Neptune are in Pisces, but on April 5th, Venus went into Pisces, and then on April 14th, Mars is going into Pisces. Now, they move a little more quickly, but there's going to be a few weeks there when there are 4 planets out of 10 in Pisces. So that Piscean energy is very strong right now.
Beautiful.
So, Karen, the thing I want to say is, first of all, any astrologer that said 1965 was
question.
Yes. Any astrologer that said 1965 was a hard year to be born, I'd like to break their hands. Okay. 1965 had stuff going on. The outer planets move very slowly. And so they create what I call like mini generations of people. And in the 60s, Uranus and Pluto very slowly merged in Virgo. And we're kind of together from about 63 to about 67, 68. So everybody born during that period of time has Pluto and Uranus conjunct in Virgo. This is the same energy that created the 1960s. Uranus, the planet of disruption, and Pluto, the planet of the masses, So the planet of disruption was disrupting the masses, and it was in Virgo, which is all about rules, and all the rules are blown out of the window, blown out of the water. Why do we have to get married? Why can't boys have long hair? Why do we have to work 9 to 5? So all these rules. So inside you, from 1965, you have this rebellious change the world spirit mixing with the rest of your planets. To me, a healthier astrology would say, and I've done lectures on this, some charts are more challenging than others, but I wouldn't call them hard. Yes, some people have to do a little more homework than others, but the rewards are very rich when you do it. So one of the things you might want to do, talk to an astrologer, find out where Uranus and Pluto are conjunct in Virgo in your chart and how it relates to the other planets. Because, sometimes with those mini generations, you'll find some people where everything is set up for them to deny what's going on and fight against it, and other people have it set up to move it forward. So that's why in the 60s you had the ones that went to Vietnam and the ones that protested the Vietnam War. So you do have that sort of mini. My wife was actually born in 1964, so I'm somewhat familiar with that energy. So there are probably challenges in your chart. One of the things I do find very interesting when you look at difficult aspects in charts, they often generate more energy than the harmonious ones, except they need to be paid attention to. The harmonious ones flow easily. It's like, oh, I win lotto every week. Yeah, that's fine. But the difficult aspects create a lot more energy. And what I call it, you have to steer it. And the analogy I always use for difficult quality in the chart is it's kind of like there's a garden hose laying in the yard, and somebody turns the water on really strong, and it starts whipping around the yard. It breaks a window, but it also waters the plants. Somebody has to grab the hose and steer it. And that's what I see when I see difficult aspects in chart. If you can learn to grab the hose and steer it, you've actually got a lot more power. But you do have to pay attention a little more when you have challenges in chart. So that's one thing to consider, Karen, if that makes some sense to you. Without, of course, seeing
great.
Yeah.
How was that, Karen? You can drop that in the chat real quick. Did that help? And you can always have Anthony do your chart, www.aspicco.com. Wow, I sound like I'm almost professional doing that. I've actually interviewed somebody before. Never have I interviewed anybody before or done this. This is a lot of fun though. So hopefully that answered your question. I think the next one is, let's see. Oh, there we go. Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Angela's there you go.
Next question
that answered that. So Angela is not our spirits around us, and do we get any signs that they are there? Oh yes, yes.
Oh, yeah.
There are spirits all over the place. The whole thing with the love and light and and all that stuff, right? Is I'm talking to angels, I'm talking to Archangel Michael, I'm talking to, what? They're busy. I'm not saying they don't chat with you every now and then and that they don't come during those very intense times. But there are all kinds of spirits around us all the time. How do we know that they're there? Well, it depends. There are all kinds of ways. I know that I have a very high level of what's called clairaudience, which is clear hearing. So I can hear beings whether they are in the body or out of the body. I can hear them talking. People might get ringing in the ears. That is one. People with tinnitus or any of those things, inner ear things. But when you get ringing in your ears, that is a sign that a being is talking to you. You can feel something, let's say, brush against your cheeks. You can have a dream. You can get an image. There's just as many psychic abilities as there are spirits. Tony, take it away.
Seth has pointed out, too, that sometimes it's very subtle. Not everybody perhaps has Debra's level of awareness. But Seth has said, you're listening to the radio when your mother's favorite song comes on and she's been dead for 20 years. And you think about her, that's mom saying hello. Or for that matter, you walk into an antique store and there's this beautiful blue vase and it makes you think of Aunt Mary's blue vase in her room. That's Aunt Mary saying hello. So sometimes these little things come in very strongly. And actually, I do know another psychic medium who said that right now, and I don't know what now meant to her. She said the veil is gone. And by determining the veil, there is a veil between us and the other side because we're trying to keep it straight.
It's very thin, and
it's very thin.
We have been actually going back and forth between it. So it's an interesting. I don't know that it's gone, but it's
that's what she asked. I assigned it to her.
As we raise our vibrations, and I'll jump on that, and then I don't mean to interrupt, but as we raise our vibrations, we lighten. We are not physical. There's nothing here. We are a bunch of atoms and molecules that have come together, but there's space, right? So we're like glued together space. But yeah, so go ahead and finish that, because it's interesting, but it is fluid.
Yeah, it all flows. And no, you're right. We're not here. And actually, just to completely freak everybody out, Seth has said,
I was going to say, that's your wife.
And maybe through Celeste, I don't know. We actually recreate the universe every millisecond. So what we think is consistent is actually something that's constantly being recreated all the time. Like this cup, right now it's this, and maybe an hour ago it was a mineral in the Rocky Mountains, and then an hour before that it was a scalpel in a surgeon's room in Italy. All the molecules and energies constantly recombine all the time. If you think of a movie and film, how it keeps running. If you look at a movie, it's all one. It's just a series of one image, frozen. But we run them really fast, and they start looking like they're moving. We're recreating the universe all the time, which is why when we want to manifest something, we can, because we're actually asking the universe to recreate itself with this thing that we need. These energy flows. Look, read the Seth material. I'm probably not saying it quite as well as he did, but there's something about that. So you said, are we real? Not exactly. We are physical, and we create this deliberately, but we can change it. We can alter it. I've seen things that happen that are physically impossible. And if nothing else, people used to remember in the 80s, walking on fire was really cool.
Yeah.
Well, something's going on there when you talk yourself into be able to walk across live coals and not burn your feet. You're doing something, and there's nothing like, a secret chemical coating. They willed themselves not to be burned, and they believed it long enough not to be burned. So now, and Seth has said, okay, you're not going to be able to fly out the window like Superman. There are certain limitations that we chose, but we can do so much more than we realize. He said we can run the mile faster than ever. Actually, one of his books, and I can go on in hours about this, but at one point, we all believed no one was going to break, I think, the 5-minute mile. And then and for years that stood, like nobody could run faster than 5 minutes in a mile. And then what happened was somebody broke it. And the next year or two, 3 more people broke that record. So there was this belief in place that everybody said we cannot break the 5-minute mile. And somebody came along and said, let's see what we can do with this. And their beliefs changed. And then society's beliefs changed. Right. So this is how we kind of fertilize each other and inspire each other and show each other that we can do so much more than we realize.
And that is where we are. So, my goodness, this has been a blast. And I know that we have more of a future of these.
Whenever you want, I'll be back. Yeah.
I just suspect, because this is definitely a lot of fun with friends, and people seem to be loving the subject matter here as I'm, as we're putting that up. So again, you can reach Anthony on Facebook. You can contact him at www.aspicco.com, Anthony Picco. You can reach him through me. He's Cosmic Tuesdays.
Yes, my show.
Every Monday from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. This is a podcast. I will drop in the comments to later. I forgot I meant to put the Apple one that I was on. I forgot to post that. Sorry, y'all. I've been multitasking. I am, but I think you can go to Apple and pull up your archives.
Yeah, it's called Cosmic Tuesdays. It's live Monday evening. Then the minute the show is over, it's automatically sent to Big Apple Podcasts, Spreaker.com, archives, this places it's sent to. But the live show, if you want to participate in the chat room and stuff, is 8 to 9:30 on Monday evenings.
And he's got some incredible. I have to listen to the show from the other night because that had to be off the chart. Guy talks to the Pleiadians and things. I can't wait to
Andromedans.
To listen to that. But thank you so much for being here and playing with me. I am doing an Earth Day meditation and healing and tree planting again, like I did last year. So we will do an hour of meditation for healing the earth. Actually healing the earth. And I'm partnered up with a nonprofit called One Tree Planted that plants trees. So a portion of the proceeds from the meditation will go towards planting trees. Plus you have the ability to add an additional amount to plant even more trees. If you like, you can visit my website and go to the booking. Wait, hang on. Let me put up my website really quick because I did. Here's the booking. You can go to actually spiritlightinsight.com and you will be able to find thank you so much for being here, Karen. You will be able to find the link to sign up for the meditation. I hope you all come. It'll be fun. Tony, please come and join us. It's only an hour and it's going to be amazing as we all get together to add exactly what we're talking about is create the world exactly the way we want it to be. First, you have to see it.
One quick comment, by the way. I'm a member of a group on Facebook called Reiki Ward. And you can join, and just people will send in requests. Like my Uncle Joe is having surgery today, and if you sign up, you can group Reiki on your own. It's another way to heal the world. Reiki Ward on Facebook.
And come to my meditation on the 22nd. SpiritLightInsight.com. Scroll down and join us. It's going to be a lot of fun as we create the world once again as we want it. So in signing off, and Tony will be on for a second after I end the stream. But thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. The recording, everything will be gelled by tomorrow. But this has been incredible. And I just want you all to remember that the only way to create the world the way we want it is to see it, feel it, know it, and dream it the way we want it. So go out there, be kind, love you all. Till the next time. Bye.